11 Personnel is live at lunch. I'm Nick Roush with Adam Luckett for one of our favorite off-season shows of the year. It's the Coaching Carousel review. Mid-February feels about right, but Luckett, the more we get into the weeds, the more the coordinators matter, and there was some big-time ones that happened just in the last week. Georgia and Alabama, two opponents Kentucky will face this offseason. Notre Dame just made a move yesterday for former Wildcat that we'll probably touch on. So a lot of things happening, moving, shaking. And before we get into our kind of review of the best hires, the most head-scratching ones of the college football offseason, Luckett, we got a message board.
We do. KSR Plus launched on Monday. It's behind the scenes. This has been a month, 2 month process, I think, just getting this up and going. Probably maybe even longer than that. Even longer than that, figuring out what we're gonna do. But yeah, that's running out. I'm not gonna, I would really appreciate it if you all joined for obvious reasons. I understand it's a different model that we're using, asking for some of your hard-earned cash, but I do think we're going to deliver stuff that's not out there. Number one, our message board is getting up and running right now, Nick. That in itself, I think, is worth the price of admission.
It's just going to be fun.
We're just going to have a lot of fun with that. Yeah. Roush is going to share scuttlebutt. Drew Franklin's going to share some scuttlebutt. We already got a nice little gambling thread up and rolling on that, and so that's just going to be, a nice tool that we're all going to interact with. It's probably next football season that thing's going to get pretty rowdy during games.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I would highly go ahead.
I think the thing that I'm looking forward to most on the message board is there's a lot of stuff you hear that you don't want to make news.
Yes.
It's just like that we can share that on there, and it's not. KSR says that so and so, and it just becomes a big deal. So I'm looking forward to that aspect of it, and I'm also just looking forward to kind of cutting up. And we also take a lot of flack for saying we don't keep up with recruiting, and the nature of it is just sometimes writing 400 words about recruiting news, we're keeping up with it, we're just not beating the doors down with 400 words on little things here and there, odds and ends to kind of keep up with things. So that gives us another outlet to keep the kind of content flowing without having to overexert ourselves over just some kids' offers,
And to that point, I think this move, getting Jacob Polachek on, this allows, from a football side, both me and you to kind of stay in our wheelhouse here.
Yes, yes. Because reaching out to kids, man, it's tough. It's trying to get interviews set up, and it can be a difficult process. I've gotten stood up by so many kids that it's embarrassing that I'm still getting stood up by teenagers in my 30s. So, Jacob's a grinder, and that's what we needed there.
Yeah, and from my end, I think what a lot of people listening right now enjoy, and while maybe people have become fans of mine, is just kind of getting into the weeds and doing some stuff. And that's what this opportunity is going to provide. You're going to get more long form, diving in, breaking down personnel, advanced stats, scheme, all kinds of stuff from me. And this is going to be a year-round thing. I think we're still trying to figure out how that we kind of play it out during the season, but during the off season, we're going to get into the weeds and really going to break some stuff down. And I think, Nick, no one else is going to be doing it like this. I would say not only in this Kentucky market, but college football in general. This is going to be, I think, I'm pushing this to, we're going to be real close to cutting edge on this with some of the stuff that I'm planning on produce. So we have a couple things up already. Kind of broke down Devin Leary and what the fit could be in Cohen's offense. When you look at Leary in the past, he ran a very much modern offense. They never really threw the ball over the middle, which is going to change here next season, but he really excelled throwing the go ball. Whether you talk about back shoulders, fades, before vertical concepts, that's where he was kind of at his best. And when you look at Kentucky, whether it's slot fades with Barry and Brown or Dane Key on back shoulder throws, that is going to be a huge part of the offense. And when we kind of look, we're worried about maybe the traditional run game this year. I think getting explosive in the passing game is going to be a big deal for Kentucky this season. So that kind of fits that. And to tie in with that, I dug into the left side of the offensive line with Kenneth Horsey, Marcus Cox. Pass protection is going to be a huge issue. We all know it. And we all know that right side is, you could have 3 new starters at all those 3 positions, Nick, on that right side when you look at center, right guard, right tackle. But the left side, we know what the left side's going to be. Kenneth Horsey gives them a potential all-SEC player at left guard. Marcus Cox is coming in with a lot of experience, good athleticism. That blind side has a potential to be very, very solid. And if it is that, it makes everything else easier. And a lot is riding, I think, on Marcus Cox to come in and be good for Kentucky right away. So we can just kind of touch on that and what their production for Horsey and Cox both was in the past. Went into that in detail on Wednesday. So definitely I would highly advise checking it out, but I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's $10 until August, so
that'll get you a year.
If you sign up, you get for $10, you get 6 months. And if you don't, when our new thing comes out right before the season, if you don't like it, you can easily back out. So,
and the other thing that's nice too is you get on 3+. So you get Chad Simmons, like you get everybody's.
And a certain ACC school made a questionable offensive coordinator hire. A certain team that works Golden Domes had a big public miss in their coordinator search. So if you're a fan of looking at meltdowns on other boards, you can go and get this. You can go and see what's going on at Notre Dame in Miami. Yeah. You can see how Alabama fans freaking out during their coordinator searches. So you have all of that too, which is an added plus. Too.
I'm looking forward to the night that Tennessee lost to South Carolina. Oh man, that was just
yes.
Beautiful. So
the South Carolina coaching search was an interesting message board check-in.
So let's just go ahead and dive into the head coaches first and foremost. Where in the SEC, I want to say our guy Hugh Freeze was the only.
Yeah. Let me start with overall thought here, Nick, with this search. We didn't have any, I would say, huge, crazy good jobs. Like, what was the best job here? Auburn that opened up?
Which is
Auburn. And you look at Auburn, you can make the case at Auburn with 16 SEC teams now. You could make the case it's like the 10th or 11th best job in the SEC.
Especially because with the difficulty of recruiting and stuff.
Right. With the state of Georgia and Alabama, those 2 programs, who are the 2 programs Auburn wants to beat the most, as their 2 biggest rivals, it's just a tough job right now. And so they missed on Kiffin. They settled with Freeze. So from that aspect, it was kind of an odd carousel for me because there wasn't any big jobs. It was a lot of, I would say, kind of Tier B and Tier C openings here, and so that
made the coordinator one even more fascinating to follow along.
Right.
Because there were a lot of noteworthy names and
and you compare it to last year, right? We had USC, Notre Dame, LSU, Oklahoma. Right. Like we just had a lot of big boys come open, and that created a big domino effect. This year it wasn't so much that, and it was a lot of G5 openings and smaller FBS programs kind of opening up. And so, really the 2 big ones were really Auburn, Nebraska, and then Wisconsin was a big one, obviously. But those were kind of the 3, and none of those were I feel safe to say none of those programs are going to be playing for a national championship in the next decade. I could be wrong. We'll see what Auburn and maybe if Fickell can get something really hot at Wisconsin. But this was not the Notre Dame, LSU, Oklahoma, USC. It was not that this year.
No, it certainly wasn't. Which, by the way, if curious, Texas and Oklahoma, things don't go well this year. Those could be 2 big ones. One to make a splash going into the SEC next year. So those seats are toastier out of situational stuff more so than anything.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about Venables, I think, with this, but I think what people forget in all this, like these defensive guys usually, Nick, they start really slow.
Yeah, yeah.
All of these guys start slow, but then once they get their sea legs under them, you see an explosive takeoff. Like we saw Baylor, Dave Aranda won the Big 12 title last year. Mm-hmm. After everybody was dogging on him. Year one. I would not be surprised if Oklahoma runs something off here. I mean, we'll see.
There's also the new Big 12 too.
I think there are some red flags with Venables, but I think the one to watch is really Sark to me.
Yeah.
Like the dude is 13-12 through 2 seasons at Texas.
And he's had superior talent most of the time too.
Now the thing with it, he's just recruiting gangbusters right now. You got Arch, and they should be able to run something off and get to 9-3, 10-2 to be safe making this move. But he's the one to watch, I think, if it things go south on him again.
We didn't have the big name schools open, but we had the big name personalities in coaching making big moves. And it's kind of similar to when Jeff Brohm took that job at Purdue. I was like, you can get a big job and you're waiting around and you're taking this one. Same thing I thought with Coach Prime going to Colorado, because there was multiple options out there for him. And a lot of people thought he'd stick it out and wait a little bit longer until a more prestigious job came up. Said he goes to a school that was rocking and rolling in the 90s and has been just awful. I mean, aside from the 1 year under Mel Tucker, it's been so bad. Their realignment hasn't done them any favors, stuck now in the Pac-12. But it does make it a little bit easier to see a scenario where they can win early there, where he brings some Coach Prime flair to it. And for Colorado's sake, I think just from a news-making perspective, because if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. They're going to still get a huge bump. This bump means, because Colorado, this is the most people have talked about Colorado football in 30 years.
Yeah, good point there. Like nationally, Nick, there's 12 to 15 programs that are just cycled through and talked about at a national level. Colorado's one of those now with Deion Sanders. People are just going to talk about him. I think you hit on a key point there, stuck in the Pac-12. But I think what we're missing here is the way this 12-team playoff is locked in and set, it's the Power Conference champions, and then it's at-larges with a G5 thrown in. The winner of the Pac-12 is getting a bid to the playoff.
Yeah.
And so, from Deion's standpoint, you're just looking at it, and he might just be able to out-talent everybody here. We've already seen 2 big recruiting wins. He gets Travis Hunter, gets Komani McClain. This is a dude for a 5-star from Metro Atlanta, a 5-star from Lakeland, Florida, which is Florida Gator country, and those dudes are going to Boulder to play college football.
They're taking pictures in the snow, and it's what? When did this happen?
So that alone, he's just going to be it's going to be must watch to see if he swims or sinks. I think the coordinator hires. I think he made 2 good ones. Sean Lewis, head coach at Kent State, leaves.
Yeah,
he's going to be running an Art Briles version of the veer and shoot offense.
I mean, he
Charles
could have been
Kelly,
the head coach at Cincinnati, right?
That's who Cincinnati should have hired. That's who I would have hired if I was Cincinnati. So, yeah, I mean, that guy's on a fast track eventually to get a Power 5 head coaching job. He's running kind of the in vogue spread offense in college football. That's coming to Colorado. Charles Kelly was a secondary coach at Alabama. He was a defensive coordinator under Florida State. Right, it went Mark Stoops, Jeremy Pruitt, Charles Kelly. And then he worked at Alabama for a little bit. I believe he was defensive coordinator at Tennessee maybe for a little bit. So, you get an experienced guy there who can recruit. There's a lot to like here. Colorado's going to be must-see TV. They loaded up on transfers, 23, 24, I think, transfer additions. So they're just going to be a team to watch here. And for Colorado, to me, there was a lot of pros and there weren't very many cons with this hire. He makes you nationally relevant right away. He ups the cool factor immediately. They're in a conference that you looking long term, it's a conference they could win. They could kind of be if TCU's in the Pac-12 or the Big 12 as maybe the riser that may be able to run off some playoff bids. Colorado could be that in the Pac-12. And if the Pac-12 blows up, they are going to be in prime position. If it becomes a Big 12 Pac-12 battle for what conference survives, they're in a great spot they're either going to go to the Big 12 or they're going to stay in the Pac-12. They're in a really good spot right here. I think this hire just made a lot of sense, and it's just going to be nonstop content with Deion out there.
Yeah. He'll be making some of his own content as well. I still don't know how good of a coach Deion is because he was also out talenting a lot of guys at Jackson State, but he's going to be able to do the same thing at Colorado, right? And
Right.
I think it was something like 22 wins over his last 2 seasons. Like that you're doing something right. Part of it's rah-rah, part of it's knowing stuff from his playing days. So, and also it's surrounding yourself with good coordinators, like you mentioned. So it's going to be fun to watch. One that I'm just going to sigh a lot whenever he makes news because Hugh Freeze at Auburn is going to be making news, and it's just going to be all sorts of like, can you believe Hugh Freeze said this? He's going to have a lot of aw shucks. Just, he's a righteous gemstone, right? Like
Southern gentleman.
Yeah, who just says some stuff. Auburn is the perfect place for Hugh Freeze because they're going to buy into his cornball BS. Like they buy in so fast down there, and then they sell so fast. So I don't know if it's going to be the recruiting stuff, because it feels like they hired him just so they could recruit with Bama and Georgia, and this could be a Billy Napier situation where if they aren't early returns, they're going to be ticked off real fast. So I'm fascinated how it all unfolds because they are devoid of talent, and they had huge whiffs in the transfer portal. They got to roll out that freaking Ashford guy, quarterback. That guy stinks. He's so bad. And they're over there. Hugh Freeze is talking himself into how good his quarterback is. Dude, you tried to get Graham Mertz and Devin Leary, and you lost them both to Kentucky and Florida. Suck it, buddy. You loser.
Well, yeah, they really kind of missed out on the whole Grayson McCall transfer thing, which is Coastal Carolina just a beer college? Like,
yeah. How do
is it Faber? Is it Animal House? Like, what are they classes are they taking?
I don't know, but did McCall end up somewhere? He's
at Coastal.
It was an academic situation where he couldn't transfer because of academics, which almost never happens in this day and age. But
yeah, it was trending to be a Florida Auburn battle for him, and then that kind of blew up in both their faces. And Florida's rolling with Graham Mertz, and then Auburn. I could see Asher potentially being a fit for kind of how Freeze wants to handle things, but I think it's important this hire, Nick. Like, what are the expectations here? It's to beat Alabama and Georgia occasionally. Part of the allure of Freeze is that he beat Saban at Ole Miss, and Auburn wants to, every few years they want to be playing an SEC championship game, and they want to, potentially once a decade or so probably get to the national championship, have a real shot to win it. To me, that's just asking a lot here with Freeze. I don't know if he's going to be able to get there just because of the competition. Mainly at Georgia and Alabama. It's just very, very hard for Auburn to reach their wanted ceiling when Alabama and Georgia are doing what they do. And they can do it with one, possibly, but both of those teams doing what they're doing is just tough. Now, Saban could leave. He's probably going to leave eventually and freeze his tenure, and then that could open up an opportunity. But an interesting thing. Go ahead.
My question for you, like, how desirable is Hugh Freeze just because he beat Bama twice at Ole Miss?
That's a lot of it, and he won it's
the Billy Gillispie beating Louisville in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, winning double-digit games at Liberty. Like, this dude can coach. There's no doubt about it. Like, he can coach. But another interesting thing to me, one of the best things he does is call plays, and he's not going to do that at Auburn. They are another SEC team going with this Baylor offense. Philip Montgomery was Art Briles' offensive coordinator before Kendall Briles, and he went to Tulsa, was at Tulsa like 7-8 years. He's coming over. They're installing that offense. He's giving up play calling. So, like, does that not, if you were like to grade Freeze as a head coach, a big chunk of that is what he does as a play caller. Now that's gone. So how does that look? Baylor fired defensive coordinator Ron Roberts. Dave Aranda fired him, and that's who's Auburn's defensive coordinator next year. So that on the surface looks like, you're hiring a defensive coordinator that Baylor fired. I know the just his name and Auburn together, I think that makes a lot of sense. But the moves since the hire, the inefficient portal recruiting, him giving up play calling, and iffy defense coordinator hire, I just got big questions about this, and I think it could be rocky until when Saban gets out of there. It's probably going to open up for them to give them a chance. But when does that happen? I mean, when does the robot retire? Right? He could coach for 10 more years. I mean, who knows? That's probably a stretch, but he could at least stay for 4 or 5 more years, and that's that's a long time in Auburn, Alabama.
I will say the one good move Freeze did make was his first one, and that's convinced Cadillac Williams to stick around.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Morale, recruiting, that was at least one positive. So I'll give him at least credit there. But I'll be looking forward to visiting Auburn live when the meltdowns happen. That message board is a real doozy. Closer to home, we've discussed this as it happened. It's still kind of hard to believe. Sources do tell me there are some early regrets because the Brohms are not used to Louisville traffic. They've been living in West Lafayette and Bowling Green the last couple of years. So there is some animosity towards the traffic around the Waterson Expressway and the Gene Snyder. But the fact it's still just hard to wrap your mind around Scott Satterfield leaving Louisville to go to Cincinnati hiring him, and then just gifting Jeff this job on a platter at the timing in which it happened too, where it kind of felt like he was maxing out at Purdue. They win a Big Ten West, around.
Purdue lost a lot off that offense.
Yeah. That tight end's going to get drafted. O'Connell is somehow
all three of those guys, Jones, O'Connell, and Payne Durham, are all going to get drafted.
Yeah, so that it worked out perfectly timing wise for him, and I think the biggest question that everybody had was, well, is the Adidas money going to dry up, or is it going to follow Scott and his tots? It sounds like they kept some of the California Cardinals. They got Pierce Clarkson and is it McLean? Or what was the tight end guy they got to sign?
Johnson, I think. Not Jermaine Johnson. What is that? Jamar. God, what is that guy's name?
Jamari. Yeah. We're struggling here with names, but they got that guy. Most importantly, Jeff, he did do a really good job in the portal. They brought the kid from Frederick Douglass, Devin Neal at Baylor. Like he's a good ball player. That
they got 6, 7, 8 starters from the transfer portal.
Yeah.
But what
they got? The Jackson State receiver, who is, former top 100 guy. And then the Georgia State guy was, I don't think he led the Sun Belt in receiving yards, but he was up there. He was a ball player in the Sun Belt before.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Herron, Trinity alum's coming back home. He's going to be a starter at edge for them. The Jaden Thompson from Cincinnati, he's also a guy that's going to be in the mix. Jack Plummer is going to be their quarterback.
He's a bum.
Isaac Garindo, tailback, is going to be in the rotation for them. I think Neal probably ends up starting for them. John Paul Flores, offensive lineman, he's going to end up starting for them. He's from Virginia. But that transfer success, I think people like they did a good job in Portland. I'm not saying that, but that was a sign of Satterfield's overall body of work recruiting. If you go into Louisville's older classes, 18, 19, 20, they just had a lot of misses. And that this was a roster with big holes. You got to give Satterfield's staff credit. They turned a lot of super seniors. They hit the portal hard. They had a lot of good finds. But that roster was a couple injuries away from being in an absolutely terrible position. And so, that is real with Louisville here. But Brohm's inheriting, Nick, I think, a great schedule here this first year. Yes, they have a lot of Power 5.
Looking forward to you getting to.
A lot of Power 5 games, but Louisville, if you go through SP Plus, they're going to be favorite in a lot of them. They play a lot of projected bad football teams next year. They two of their
double-digit favorites in 6 games.
Yeah, 5 or 6 games, and and they are out. They're outside the top 30 in SP Plus. They just play. They've got a lot of good games. 2 of their road games are Georgia Tech and Indiana, but they're in NFL stadiums. They're not even really road games. They get Kentucky at home. They get Notre Dame at home. They get Virginia Tech at home. They avoid
Clemson.
They avoid Clemson. Some more, brand name teams. They go to Miami. They go to NC State, but none of those are like they could win both those games. So like it's a great schedule for him, but I do think it's important. Like they have that has real roster holes, and I was pretty surprised that he just rolled with Ron English at defensive coordinator. I thought for sure they would maybe try to find someone else. And if it was anyone but Jeff Brohm that brought Ron English back to Louisville, Nick, there would have been an absolutely firestorm from his last tenure here with Gragthorpe. But instead it was Brohm. They're just kind of sliding that under the rug. But
and he had a pretty good defense last year too. Like
it was fine. They were fine. I mean, they were fine. But
that's Jeff's biggest weakness. I mean, he had Bob Diaco as a defensive coordinator at one point. The one time his best seasons. I mean, until this one where they kind of pulled some stuff out of their hat. That 8-win team had a good defense coordinator. I forget where that guy went, but that guy was good 2 years ago.
Brad Lambert. He's at Wake Forest right now.
Yeah, he was good. But it's going to be it's certainly injecting more energy into the fan base locally, the rivalry locally, and so. I love that. Just fine by me. Let's bring it on. Let's crank this up a little bit.
For me, just in general, like they have buzz now. Like Satterfield just could never get people pulling on the rope together, right? It was always something. Yeah. And so, but Jeff's going to have everybody pulling on the rope, and Brohm is going to have people that were on the fence that are just extended family friends or maybe know somebody that knows them that are going to be like, oh, let's go to the ball game today. You know, they're going to have people like the lineman is better right now for him. And that's what they needed that more than anything. Getting a Power 5 to Power 5 move, Nick, just does not really happen.
Very rare.
Especially for, let's say, Tier B, Tier C programs, which is kind of where Louisville and Purdue are. That does not happen. Like, Johnny Coach is not typically going to go from Purdue to Louisville. You know, it's a step down in conference. Purdue was, they were paying him big money there, and return on investment was nice for him because they were going to, like, if he went 4-8 next year, they wouldn't have really cared. Like, they were pretty much all in on him. So that happened, but a lot of it was just the Louisville factor. It was just, he got to come home. And so there's a lot of buzz, but this is still kind of, what was he, 36 and 33 at Purdue?
Yeah.
Like he wasn't immune to they lost a lot of games as favorites.
Trust me, you bet them
playing through their competition, right?
Yeah. They're going to win some games that they shouldn't. Like that Notre Dame game, whatever you can get it at, just bet them. They're going to beat Notre Dame at home, and they're going to beat somebody they shouldn't on the road, and then they're going to lose to somebody. Like they could lose. They're
going to lose to Virginia Tech at home, right?
Yeah. That's just how it goes.
They could, I could very much see them losing to Georgia Tech first game on the, like everybody's all high on them. They think they're going to have a great year, and Georgia Tech maybe just
hits them in the mouth a little.
And just runs it downhill, and they're just like, and Plummer throws a pick or two, and it's like, how did we lose to Georgia Tech? And then they turn around and beat, rip off 5 wins in a row or whatever.
Which I think this brings us to our good hires, bad hires, because I like that Georgia Tech did just promote Brent Key, their offensive line coach, to the head coaching position because Tech was the most lifeless program. He got them to win some football games. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they played well down the stretch. And I think the biggest problem with Georgia Tech football since they moved on from the triple option was finding an identity. And under Key, you can be an outlier as a physical team that is going to run it down your throat with an athletic quarterback. I know that guy left, but I think if you cultivate an identity around him, you can be a 7-8 win team in the ACC, which is really all that Georgia Tech can ask for.
I think the problem at Georgia Tech was just Jeff Collins became like a cartoon character. Like he went too far in the shtick, with the whole, trying to Atlanta-ize the program and lifting weights on the field, and just became, he essentially was a cartoon character. And I think he just kind of,
they would do curls on the field like during warm-ups,
and he would bring anytime he did a TV hit, he had like a Waffle House coffee cup in his hand, and he was always just Atlanta's program, blah, 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 blah. And I think he just got away from the most important part, which is like playing football, right? Like, I just think that got lost a little bit. I think with Key, they kind of get the happy medium here. This is a guy who went to Georgia Tech pre-option. He knew what Georgia Tech looked like when they were playing normal football and winning games in the ACC. He's got a big-time pedigree, like he was Nick Saban's offensive line coach at Alabama. He's got some recruiting chops. I think he just knows what they need there to win. And I think there's reasons to be optimistic about his hire. When I came up with my top 5 list, he was on there as well for me. But I'll be honest, like it was hard for me to get together a top. Like usually I have 5, 6 7 I feel really good about. This year, not so much. It was kind of like, a lot of them are just middle of the blah to me. It's just, well, we'll see. I necessarily didn't have a ton of bad ones. It was, in my opinion, but there was just a lot of. Well, I guess I could see this going either way. I think Key just kind of fits there. I think he'll build a good culture there, and in the ACC, I could see them becoming like a 7-5 type program where they're able to go to bowl games a lot.
This doesn't fall in a best or worse. Actually, no. I'll save that up for. Actually, no. The most head scratching for me, I guess it's just money. But I don't get Jamie Chadwell leaving Coastal to go to Liberty. I just don't. I don't get it. It feels like a lateral move at best, and Coastal is a little bit easier to recruit partiers than Pentecostals. Like I don't get it. And I thought, even though I'm not as high on Jamie Chadwell as some people are, like I thought he was going to go straight to Power 5 from there. So it just doesn't. I don't get that one.
Yeah, a couple things here. He's kind of getting stuck in what I think Eric Bieniemy is having an issue with. Like, he can't get hired. I'm assuming he doesn't interview well. Like, Bieniemy has an arrest record that I think probably, without getting to the race thing, I think that's probably what the owners point to. And then he got in trouble at Colorado. He's been arrested, I think, once or twice. Anything like serious, but enough if you were looking for reasons. Disorderly
conduct or something.
Yeah, if you're looking for like I think he pushed a firefighter or something in like maybe like a little bar exchange when he was younger. Just some there's some stuff there that you could point to. But Chadwell, I think he had like NCAA sanctions, Nick, when he was like a D2 or D3 coach. You add that in with he's never coached at the Power 5 level. He did the mullet thing. Yeah, I'm sure that maybe turned some old whites in administration off. And so there's just some stuff there with him. But 3 things here to me. Number 1 is money, right? Mm-hmm. He's just more money at Liberty.
Yeah.
Number 2, conference affiliation. Like the Sun Belt's a damn tough league.
Yes.
It's going to be hard to win that league. Every
probably
year.
The most competitive G5, top to bottom. And, like there aren't easy outs typically in that conference.
The best way to get a job like this is to stack multiple seasons. He did that at Coastal and the jobs didn't come. Like he's gonna fall back a little bit with his league and with he's about to lose the quarterback McCall. So I think that was a big calculus in this decision. I could go to Liberty. I've got more money. I've got more resources. They're about to go to Conference USA, which is going to be a very winnable conference moving forward for him.
It's going to be Western versus Liberty, really.
For me, just the coaches they've got good coaches in that league, and and programs that really care and really invest at that level.
What's the dude at Georgia Southern, Helton? Yeah,
Helton, Kane Womack at South Alabama is a good coach who's going to be a Power 5 coach soon. At Marshall, Charles Huff's going to be a Power 5 coach soon.
Yeah.
They just got good coaches in that league where I think it might be a little easier in the CUSA for them to break through. And so to me, that's why he made the move. More money, conference affiliation, and he's about to hit like the reason Sean Lewis left for Colorado is because he just knew like, I had my run here at Kent State. It's hard to maintain at a program like this. I got to get out.
Yeah.
And so that to me, it was similar for that with Chadwell. Of those Sun Belt schools, Coastal, I think, is probably financially one of the maybe not, has the least amount of cash resources. I would say.
Yeah, I don't think they have like deep pockets of prestigious alumni coming out of the Myrtle Beach. No
Yeah, and
offense.
they're one of the newer, like, App State's been playing football a long time. They've got a strong fan base. Troy's been playing football a long time. They got a strong fan base. Marshall, it's a strong fan base. Where Coastal, they got FCS in like 2009, 2010. They're just really just getting going, and that's just a tough league. It's a tough Group of 5 league, so I think it made sense for him. He was one of my favorite hires of the bunch. Like, replacing him going into a free system, like, I think the talent's going to align for him, and Liberty will spend money. And so I think they're going to be good. I could see him win a couple CSA titles, and then he's going to get the Power 5 job after that, after a couple years at Liberty.
The most fascinating hire of them all, the most surprising of them all, is what Wisconsin's doing.
Yes.
Everything about Wisconsin, they've fired Paul Chris just so they could promote and keep Jim Leonard, only to not promote and keep Jim Leonard.
Some balls on that athletic director, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wisconsin is the most just like boring defense, run the football. And they said
they have a brand. They have a brand, and they're changing it.
And that is very risky because the floor was so high. And it's like a 30-year floor that Barry Alvarez made, right? It was just a continuation of that going back to the 90s. They ran the football. They won 8 games. They played defense, and they go to the Rose Bowl every few years. Well, now all this stuff is changing in you're bringing in UCLA. You're bringing in USC. It's going to get a lot tougher. You don't just get to lean on the Big Ten West. So,
yeah, to mention what you're talking, like Luke Fickell, but Phil Longo is our offense coordinator.
See, that's where it is.
This is what Nick's talking about. Phil Longo, when Jordan Ta'amu and Ole Miss came in with A.J. Brown, D.K. Metcalf, Dawson Knox, Van Jefferson in 2017 and beat Kentucky at the last second.
Yeah.
He was their offense coordinator there, and he went from there, working for Matt Luke, and he went to North Carolina, was at North Carolina the last 4 years. And this is a modern spread tempo offense.
Yeah.
It's tempo. No huddle.
Yeah.
It's tempo. It's a crap ton of RPOs, and it's, they've got air raid passing concepts where they'll run mesh, they'll run 4 verts, they'll run all of that. But it's very much a modern offense, and they're hitting the gas pedal, and they're trying to score points. And that's what's coming to Madison, Wisconsin, Camp Randall Stadium, jump around. That's the offense they're going to run on. It's going to be hard. Like, it's going to be like tricky for the eyes.
Tech abandoning the triple option. It's that drastic because Fickell, as a defensive guy who had success at pretty much wherever he's been, that feels like a fit. But even how does that work with Phil Longo? And the other thing about him too, it's not like it's less about him and more about just the fit, because like people in North Carolina, they kind of wanted not necessarily a coach in waiting, but they were kind of hoping like, all right, Mac, you're not going to be here for very long. Let's just keep Phil Longo here as long as we can and promote him when the time comes. So now, in the other part that's fascinating, like it's not obviously it's different scheme wise, but like Jeff tried doing we're going to out offense you in a defensive league. So how does that work? Like, I
think that. I agree, but the calculus changes now that divisions are probably gone, I would imagine, and then USC and UCLA are coming in.
It's true, yeah.
You're just going to have to play a different style of ball, and it's going to be where
you're not playing Iowa.
Well, I think not to SEC Big Ten fight this, but the amount of offenses Kentucky saw last year, the different, the traditional old school air raid at Mississippi State, and then you go directly from that, and you're playing Tennessee's vertical rear and shoot tempo. There's just a lot. You just see a lot. And then you got traditional pro style, with Georgia. Kentucky just saw a lot of different offenses. And I think that's what you're going to have in the Big Ten with this. You're going to see, Iowa's 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but then you're going to have to go play Purdue's, traditional air raid now with Graham Harrell. And then you're going to have to face Phil Longo at Wisconsin, Lincoln Riley at USC, Ryan Day at Ohio State. And then even Penn State's running kind of a more modern spread with Mike Yurcich. It's just, You're just going to see different offenses now. And so you're just going to have to adjust to that. And so I think it's going to make the Big Ten more interesting that Wisconsin's doing this. And it just, I mean, this is a gamble for Luke Fickell because it's out of character for him. Really, it seems like. But if it works, it could just really raise Wisconsin's ceiling. And what this does to me is, like, if this works, it's going to raise their recruiting ceiling. Because offenses like this recruit themselves. And so kids are going to see, they're running that. I want to go to there to play. Let me visit Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's a cool place from a stadium aspect, and the fans really care.
Mm-hmm. Good college town. Like of all the Big Ten ones, it's up there. It's top tier.
Financially, they seem to be very well supported. Like it could just change things for Wisconsin, and it's a ballsy move by Fickell. But fascinating. This is the biggest. Like, to me, of all the hires, this has the highest ceiling, because if it hits, I mean, they could. They've hit their head on that ceiling where they can get top 6, top 7. Where they can go 11-1 or whatever, but when they play the big dogs, when they play Ohio State, they just don't have the ammo to win. Like, this offense would give them the ammo to win a game like that, and I think that's what Fickell is going for. But it could also, I think, flame out pretty quickly too. So it's going to be a fascinating watch.
Even if it does flame out, like, there is you kind of just, all right, well, let's go back to what we were doing.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? Like that.
I agree.
You can still recruit the big uglies on the offensive line.
It's not like they were playing bad defense at Cincinnati with Fickell, and he's bringing his defense coordinator over, Mike Tressel. Like, I think they're gonna be fine. They're gonna be able to recruit Ohio. He's gonna be able to get the same dudes. It's just gonna, I think, maybe make their talent pool a little bigger and raise their, I think, ceiling as a program if this works, and we'll have to see if it works.
Didn't they have 2 starting NFL cornerbacks last year? Didn't their other corner start too? Team?
Well, they had Kobe Bryant and who plays for the Seahawks. And then they had Brian Cook, who's a safety for the Chiefs, who played this year. They had all kinds of draft picks. I mean, that Cincinnati team last year was stacked.
The one question we got from Connor on the YouTube page that, he was wondering about what happened at Mississippi State in the Mike Leach fallout, which we mentioned before. But if I'm going to go worst hires, I don't like the decision to get out of the air raid, at least for this year. I would have tried to keep that thing going, because what made Mississippi State such a challenge was that you had an unorthodox offense and defense. Like that, they were very much this 3-3-5 defense and this offense aren't what we were used to. He's got Will Rogers coming back. I don't know why you just don't try to keep the continuity. And if you want to scrap it and start from scratch, go for it. But, dude, you're replacing like 10 guys on your starting defense. Like that was a little head scratching to me, to get to ditch the air raid. As somebody, who's got to play against them, I'm all for it. Good job, Zach Arnett. But that was surprising for me.
Yeah, the only problem really is, like, Mike Leach has this huge coaching tree, and that's like his long-lasting impact on the sport. But no one does it anymore like he did it. I mean, he was very old school in how they approach it. Like, a lot of them have, like, opened up, gone tempo, more run game. Mm-hmm. Where with him, it was like they weren't getting, like, they were no huddle, but they were taking their time. And there was old school air raid where they were, you had to, like, they would run split backs. No one else runs split backs. They were, hardcore mesh rail with a wheel route with a running back. They would run some 4 verts, but it was a Y cross. But I mean, it was very much old school stuff, and no one really runs it like that anymore. So to me, there wasn't the obvious hire there. Like, you could have went and got somebody off the tree, which I thought was the move they would have made.
Yeah, that's what.
So you look at maybe like Graham Harrell. I thought that might have made some sense. Somebody like that. Ben Arbuckle, who was at WKU.
I thought Spurrier Jr. might have had a shot at it just because of his name,
But, so he doesn't do. But I think it's important to know the tree, right? Where does Zach Arnett come from? He's a Rocky Long disciple. 3-3-5. What a Rocky Long and his disciples, all the guys have got head coaching opportunities, which is small sample size, but they've all had boring offenses. Mm-hmm. Like him, Brady Hoke, Danny Gonzalez, who's at New Mexico. Their offenses have always kind of stunk. And so it's run heavy. It's, we're going to play conservative, and our defense is going to win games. And so I think you're going to see some of that next year at Mississippi State. Hiring Kevin Barbay, had a good offense last year at App State, Nick, but they went like 6-7. We'll see. Well, I mean, it's a big risk here, but totally like that scheme shift is big time. Like I think the drop off with Will Rogers is probably going to be pretty big here, having to play in a totally different offense, and he has physical limitations as a thrower. I have doubts that it's going to work. They're probably going to shift to like more of an outside zone, I think, stretch offense. That's totally different to what this offensive line was recruited to run. I think offensively, there's a decent sized chance it could be a train wreck next year. And just how do they handle that? And then the biggest skill they had was Arnett calling the defense. He's not going to call it anymore. They're still going to run the same structure, but how good is this new defensive coordinator? It's just a huge questions with Mississippi State. I could definitely see them having a bad first year. I mean, we'll see. Arnett's still pretty young too, Nick. I mean, he's only been in the Power 5 3 years.
Yeah.
And it was as Mississippi State's defensive coordinator. That's just a big step up for him. It's essentially what if like Kentucky would have hired John Summerall just like before he went to Troy. Right. It's just a big step up. And, there's a lot to like, but it's a huge step up early in a guy's coaching tenure. We'll see how it works. The coordinator hires on paper are iffy. See how it plays out.
Yep. Well, do you have a worst hire? Do you have a this? I don't get this.
I mean, well, there's two of them for me that really stick out. We can start with the one you want to start. Trent Dilfer or Scott Satterfield.
Oh man, Trent Dilfer. He's so easy to make fun of because he just says the dumbest things. And he's a big word guy, right? He really works hard on his vocabulary, and he wants you to know that he works hard on his vocabulary. I don't even think it's a smart thing. It's just like, I know big words. Like, you should know these words. Like, look them up in the dictionary. So it's just very, like, that. It's big. He coached in high school, no experience. It's just like Bill Clark was awesome for them. It's a big drop off. We'll see. He's hired, like, if you look at his hires, Nick, it was a lot of like young guys who are like quality control dudes at bigger schools, Ohio State, Alabama. So does it work here? Yeah. They're joining a league that's going to be pretty tough. They're jumping up to the American next year. I don't see it working, but we'll see. I mean, it was a fascinating hire, and we're going to get into this. I want to save the press conference stuff for next, but that was very interesting press conference, to say the least. Yeah. And then Satterfield. Just like, what do you? Whew.
To me, the biggest thing with Satterfield is this. I think this athletic director panicked. Like, they were going to the Big 12. He didn't want to roll the dice and risk it on a guy with without any Power 5 experience. Satterfield interviewed when they hired Fickell. Administration liked him. He was available. He had a winning record in the Power 5. If you throw his App State record on top of that, that looked really good. In the recent recruiting success, he just hit certain boxes, but there wasn't like any, I don't think, deep dives kind of, because if you dig a little deeper, you would find like there's some red flags, I think, here. Most notably, like his fit at Louisville they're the same. Like Cincinnati and Louisville kind of have the same culture from a fan base standpoint.
Yep. Almost
it's
identical.
Like this. It's this. I mean, it's literally just an hour and a half up the road. Like it's just the same.
Also, their paths to where they are to they were once rivals in conferences. They've been left behind in a lot of the realignment stuff, and you had such a. The biggest thing for me is they've had success with these big, strong personalities, and Satterfield is such a wet blanket compared to Brian Kelly and Luke Fickell. Like those guys.
I worry about Cincinnati's. I worry about their fit in the Big 12. Like we've seen with West Virginia, it's just a bad fit. I think adding Cincinnati is going to help West Virginia and Cincinnati together, and then they already have that kind of established rivalry of UCF. So at least Cincinnati fans are going to have some games like to get excited about. But you're an Ohio school playing in the Texas Conference. It's just an odd fit, and Satterfield's bringing in an offense that's not really what they run there. That could work both ways. Like it could take some adjusting for the Big 12 to adjust to that, and they could sneak back teams, but it's just an odd fit. Like, I don't think everybody just – it probably goes similar to his Louisville tenure. He's 4 years. He's hovering around 500. Fans are not super thrilled with the product on the field, but he'll pull off a win over a top 25 team every once in a while and be like, well, do we keep him? Do we not? It's just kind of like, do we extend this guy or do we not extend this guy? And so it's just an odd hire by him. I really do think that AD kind of panicked there because they got in the coaching search, and I don't think the talent pool was really what they wanted it to be. I think a lot of that has to do with the fit in the Big 12. I think it's an odd fit for Cincinnati in that league. I think West Virginia is a perfect example of it might be, difficult for them. Difficult recruiting. It's difficult for your fans, I think, to get excited, especially without, like, you're not welcome in Texas and Oklahoma here every year, one of them. That hurts too.
On the other foot, it's also bizarre in that former Conference USA opponents, TCU and Cincinnati, are going to be the only two teams in the Big 12 with college football playoff experience. I mean,
yeah,
that's
another thing. Like, the expectations are raised because of that. And I think Fickell, like, it was a little odd that Fickell went to Wisconsin because he was on, like, that USC, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan track, like, to get to one of a team with, like, a national championship, little just like above, just a tier above Wisconsin. And that he took that, I think a reason he took that was because he didn't want any part of Cincinnati being in the Big 12.
No, I think you're right on that. Luckett, I admittedly did not watch as many press conferences as you did. Some attended one, but was not a big press conference guy. So, what was the most bizarre of them all? Was it Trent Dilfer?
The first one, like, I felt Jeff Brohm's, I don't have many hobbies, I just love football. Because I live that every day of my life.
Yeah.
So I did
get an occasional movie in.
I did
Jeff's
like that.
Hobby is like going to like a local high school basketball game or something.
Watch a golf tournament, maybe go play 18. But I really did feel that. Like, that was very much in my wheelhouse. So I respected that comment.
Yeah.
Kevin Wilson, Tulsa, off the grid here. Ohio State offensive coordinator's going to Tulsa.
Former Indiana coach that got in trouble.
Now, he dropped the stats are for losers nerd, or the stats are, which I hate. I mean, I just hate with all of my being. Like, bro, are you? I know you keep bare minimum completion percentage in your QB competition. So, get the hell out of here with that. But that wasn't even the oddest part of this. Like, the president gets up, 2-minute typical president statement. Athletic director comes up. Usually, it's like a typical 8-9 minute speech. Nick, they introduce the coach. And blah, blah. Now, this athletic director, it's an older gentleman. I think his name's Rick Smith. I could be getting that wrong. So he starts, and then he asks, Nick, I'm not kidding you, he asked to turn the cameras off for this during a press conference. Well, no one turns the cameras off, so it's just him. And he just goes on a diatribe about how, getting older, he asks for things, talks about his wife, talks about Tulsa, talks about, how, like, he had to fire a coach, he didn't like it. I mean, it went on for 25 minutes. And I was like, what is this? What is going on right now? It was the most odd, like, press conference I've ever watched. Now, I mean, if that would have happened if that happens at a big school, I could not imagine the reaction. Yeah.
You call a press conference and then ask them to turn their cameras in the middle of it.
And then Kevin Wilson gets up, he hits it with the I was like, man, there's a lot going on there at that Tulsa press conference. Another one, UAB's athletic director introducing Trent Dilfer. Like we mentioned earlier, Dilfer uses a lot of big words. If you've seen him on ESPN, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But his athletic director in the middle of this said he's going through the search process. He's talking to people. He was pretty open about kind of how it worked. And he's like, he sat there. And he said he was like sitting in his car or looking in the mirror one day, and he was like, am I really about to hire a high school coach? And what I would have wanted to said to him is just, yes, stop, like, back, abort. But he says, no, I'm not about to hire a high school coach. I'm about to hire Trent Dilfer, the high school coach. And I was like, oh, my God, he did not just say that.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and so that was I give him props because he was very transparent about, but that comment was one of the more jarring I think once, and that whole hiring, it was like they were really hiring Trent Dilfer. So that was interesting. Apparently, the Naval Academy is still on Zoom, Nick. So they didn't have it was literally people sitting in their office. Which that one's one of the weirder ones. There was like a coup there, like a Phil Fulmer-esque coup, because apparently like Brian Newberry and some important people at Naval Academy kind of got Niumatalolo like pushed out.
Yeah,
so they could hire him. So that was a little
convinced
odd.
That he was stale, even though he's, I believe, the winningest football coach in the Naval Academy's history.
Yeah, but they're doing the same. I think they're running the triple option again. Like they're doing everything else except Newberry's the head coach. It was just kind of that was odd. And then Kenny Dillingham cried in 0.8 seconds at Arizona State. I mean, and I'm talking ugly crying.
Oh,
and it
man.
was it,
and
it did
he's
not
one
stop.
of those that I think could end up being decent.
Yeah, when I wrote best 5 hires, he was on there. I think it just adds up where it could work. Also on there was I like Brent Key, Barry Odom. I like just because of his aggressiveness. Offensive coordinator. He hired Petrino, but then he followed up with Brendan Marion, who kind of ran this spread option FCS offense that was really popular. He was Texas receivers coach last year, and so those were the moments at press conferences that stuck out.
Well, unfortunately, if they have, I would have been tuned in. I don't think we've had a Bobby Petrino Texas A&M press conference yet.
No, I haven't seen that yet. No. I wonder if Jimbo even lets them talk, or if it's like the Saban thing where the coordinators don't talk.
I bet he doesn't, and I bet Bobby's happy to oblige. But there was the two big movers in Texas. Kendall Browse going to TCU.
Mm-hmm.
The outrage that followed, I did not understand. It's like, dude's been at Arkansas for a couple of years now. Were y'all outraged every Saturday? Like, why are you outraged now over him getting this job? Like, the Baylor thing happened a long time ago, and I don't know the specifics of it, so I'm not trying to admonish him of his sins, whether he had them or not. But, like, where was this energy for Kendall Brow's outrage when he was at Arkansas? Like, we've moved on, right? America's moved on from that for everybody except Art Browse, and I think that's fair. Like, I didn't understand that outrage. I do think the Bobby Petrino move, though, is hilarious and also shows you how desperate Jimbo is. I mean, that is desperation. And for Jimbo to, it's one thing for him to hand over the keys to a guy like Kendall Browse, some young guy with this innovative offense. I mean, Jimbo and Bobby were competing against each other. Like, this is the tension between those two. Like, there's no way Petrino's on the sideline for A&M. Like, he's got to be in the booth just MFing each other. Because if not, I cannot wait to see their interactions on the sideline. Because I know that what's going to happen is Petrino's going to call down plays and Jimbo's going to change them, and it's going to piss him off so much. It's just
Yeah, I think, Nick, during this offseason, I'm going to, for the first time, I'm going to do top 10 or so teams must watch. Like teams just from an entertainment aspect, you should go out of your way to watch this year. Like Colorado's obviously going to be on there. Mm-hmm. The A&M, Jimbo Factor. And for Kentucky fans, Miami has to be on there now.
Yes.
With Shannon Dawson. I can't, and when digging into this hire and why Cristobal likes him, it is literally you could carbon copy Mark Stoops' press conferences from 2015. It's he's air raid, but he's got really good ideas in the run game, and they're going to run it and all this, yada yada yada. And my takeaway is Dana Holgorsen has done his friend some solids over the year.
They haven't been very good, and he's getting a lot of credit for what Holgo did.
Yeah. The Southern Miss offense that he inherited was Todd Monken's offense. Todd Monken and Chip Lindsey. It had 3 pros. Nick Mullins is still in the NFL. Ito Smith had a cup of coffee with the Falcons. I believe Quez Watkins was a receiver for them at that time. Yep. I could be wrong, but he's on the Eagles right now. And they were good, but they took a step back. I mean, everybody remembers the Kentucky game, but if you watch that year, they had a disappointing first season, and then they tanked the next year. They ended up in SP Plus. They were in the hundreds, and so they got rid of him after that. He goes to Houston. They said middle of last year he started calling plays for Houston. We can believe that if we want. He called plays this year, and they kind of had a disappointing season for most of the year. And he had pros like Clayton Tune and Tank Dell are getting drafted. They're quarterback and receiver. Probably in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round. Like, he had dudes on his team, and the offense. I never once watched Houston. It's like, man, this offense is really good. And so Miami hires him. It's just an odd fit, but good for him that he's getting this gig. But like, it's just odd. It's just an odd fit. I cannot believe that's where he landed.
I mean, the fact that Miami fans thought they were going to get the Eagles quarterback coach and ended up with Shannon Dawson instead is just. It's also perfect. It's perfect for that program, right? I mean, just the big swings and misses.
I don't understand why it took them so long to fire their offense coordinator, because they essentially sabotaged their search.
Yeah,
like, you needed to get in that right away.
Do it, yeah, and
because the market dried up.
And this is the thing too. Like, if you talk to when you have NFL draft guys talk about Justin Herbert or really any Oregon prospect, like they talk about like him having success in spite of Mario Cristobal and his failures as a coach for offensive football. And he's hiring Shannon Dawson to figure it out. That's wild to me.
Well, and you look at some of the offensive coordinators he had, like the least effective Moorhead was as a play caller was kind of at Oregon, where he was maybe hamstrung a little bit. Now hands were tied. Now, a lot of that was with, their quarterback situation wasn't great, but Anthony Brown is on a roster. He's a backup for the Ravens, so it wasn't terrible. And then the Justin Herbert thing, like, they had Herbert and they didn't really unleash him that season. And then they got late in the season. They were like, well, let's get out all this run heavy. Let's just let Herbert spin it. And they went and kicked Utah's ass in the Rose Bowl or in the Pac-12 championship, and they went and won the Rose Bowl. I think they beat Wisconsin. So then it was like, why weren't we doing this all year? And now you've seen what Herbert became in the NFL. So, yeah, there's some questions with him. It's just that there was reasons, I think, to be excited about Cristobal, but you're a year in and seeing how they're trending. Recruiting's going great, but it's just like, I don't know about this. And so we'll see what Dawson does. But, yeah, there's a question in the chat. What if Dawson wins at Miami, though? He might. Then that might be come back to some of Stoops' issues with hiring offensive coordinators, which we've talked about a lot. But I don't think that it's going to be super great knowing what I've seen from Dawson. Not only at Kentucky, Southern Miss wasn't great, and a lot of times he's been in non-play calling roles most of his career. And seeing what Houston does on offense next year, like what if Houston takes a big jump forward, with him out of the picture? We'll see what happens there.
One other move that I wanted to mention. I mean, I don't have any sort of indictment on Tommy Rees at Alabama. It just felt like he was a Notre Dame kind of lifer for a while, and
he's only 30 years old. I mean, he's young.
Yeah, he's our age. I dated a girl in college that went to school with him. Said he was a D-bag. So I have Tommy Rees bias because of the girl that I dated 10 years ago. But so it doesn't put the fear of God in me. Like Saban's both were pretty underwhelming.
I think they were just high floor hires.
Yeah.
I could see them both being improved over O'Brien and Pete Golding, but it's not like, oh damn, that's a huge hire. It's not that. But I think they both have high floors, so I think they'll be all right.
We need to get a little bit more into this, but I forgot. I don't want to forget. We once had the Coastal Circle where every different Atlantic ACC Coastal team won the division. They took their turns. Well, Robert Anai is trying to complete his Atlantic tour where he's just going year by year to a different team in the Atlantic division. First it was Virginia. They were good. Then he goes to Syracuse. They were good. And now he's at – is it NC State?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's reuniting with Brennan Armstrong. I'm a fan of that. I think that worked out really well for NC State. Digging into Leary this week, receiver position had been kind of an issue with them. Nick, they didn't have one receiver – unless Thayer Thomas gets drafted this year, who's kind of just your typical slot receiver. They didn't have one receiver that got drafted during Leary's tenure.
Not great.
That's another reason I think you could get excited about Leary, because he has some production
without much
with a low ceiling at a skill position. And so that alone is exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I like an eye there. I think that's going to work. NC State's defense has really been humming the last 3 years under Tony Gibson, running a 3.35, getting a 9 there. We've seen what it was. You saw the drop off at Virginia, and then you saw how much improved Syracuse were. Just those two examples, like that, they're probably going to be better on offense next year. Armstrong is probably going to be much closer to what he was in 2021 as opposed to 2022, which was a train wreck season for him at Virginia. So I like that a lot. Like NC State, I think is a sneaky team because of that. I'd have to dig into the roster, see what they returned, but I did like that a lot. That was one of my favorite coordinator hires of this offseason.
The last thing that I wanted to get to before we wrap things up, going a little bit long today, but in general, there's a lot of high turnover for Kentucky opponents next year at play calling positions. We already mentioned Alabama. Now, I think they'll have things figured out by November, but they've got to figure out new quarterbacks, right? Todd Monken leaves Georgia. I don't think the cage will be rattled a ton with the promotion of Mike Bobo, because he's still going to get the ball to Brock Bowers a ton.
Not rocket science.
Yeah. But he's got to find a new quarterback, right? And then South Carolina, Shane Beamer's going to come kick our ass because we aren't talking about how great Dow Loggins is. That could be a train wreck. And Eli Drinkwitz, he's given up play calling duties too. So a lot of turnover.
Also very likely that Shane Beamer looked in our face and just straight up lied to people about Loggins and his SEC offense coordinator hires. I mean, unless this guy is just operating in the dark like Batman, I don't, where's that coming from?
Do you strike me as does Shane Beamer strike you as a guy who's not leaking stuff out to everybody who'll talk to him?
Yeah, because I mean, we're pretty tied in here, and we know that he was in maybe Stoops' top 3 last year, but he wasn't top 2. It was either going to be Scangarello or Calabrese.
Yeah. They were throwing him a bone just mentioning his name.
Now, you could make the argument that if he would have stayed, he'd probably be Arkansas's offense coordinator now that Browse left. I could hear that, but where's the other ones? Where's Vandy? Did Vandy call him? Like, who's out there? So that one's just a fascinating one to me. Like, who's going to end up being better for Marcus Satterfield or Dow Loggins?
Yeah.
Like, what if it's a drop-off, Now, he inherit, they get what Juice Wells and Spencer Rattler back, so that should help. But that's one's fascinating. Another one, Nick, like you talk about around Kentucky, like the Alabama one's big, Georgia one's big, South Carolina is obviously big there, and then Louisville's brand new. So there's a lot of turnover. But I think you have to feel very good about Liam Cohen. Like looking back on this offensive coordinator search, you have to feel good about where Kentucky landed in that, who they got.
Yeah,
that should make you feel really good. And then another one, like Garrett Riley at Clemson, I really like a lot.
Dabo, changing things up, not promoting from within.
It's very similar, I think, to the Chad Morris hire, where I think this is really going to work out well for Clemson. You're taking a Texas offensive coordinator who's bringing a Texas offense, and you're joining forces with a Texas 5-star quarterback there at Clemson in Kate Klubnik. I really think this is going to work out well for them. I think this is a big upgrade over their last 2 play callers. I think this is really going to work for them. You just got to keep that defense, make sure they don't drop off because they're losing a lot of, star players there. But I think this is going to work out well for Clemson, and I think they'll be back in the playoff next year because of this move. I think it's really going to be a good kind of, and it kind of happened under the radar. Like Dabo just pulled a fast one on us and made the move.
Yeah.
So I think that's really going to work out well for them. And then there were a lot of Kentucky ties, Nick, like Jared Parker and Gino Guidugli are kind of be a 1-2 punch at Notre Dame. Jared Parker played at Kentucky. Gino Guidugli was the quarterback after Jared Lorenzen at Highlands and was Cincinnati football. He's the guy I thought, if Cincinnati didn't hire Sean Lewis, I thought he should have been the guy for Cincinnati. Former Trinity and Louisville quarterback Will Stein is the play caller at Oregon now. Oregon's going to be another team that's going to be in the playoff conversation.
He went up from Roadrunners, UTSA.
Yeah. And then it was just 1 year play caller, but I mean, that's a big step up for him. Then Brian Hartline, obviously, it's a name we talked about a lot. He got promoted to Ohio State. Is the offense coordinator there, probably in a non-play calling role, but that's going to allow him where he's going to go directly there to a Power 5 head coaching job. Whether it's getting the Ohio State job if Ryan Day ever goes to the NFL, or getting another head coaching job. And so that's all of those kind of, I think, hit close to home here at Kentucky. And there's a lot of guys locally who are in big, like Will Stein, Oregon's a big job. Jared Parker, Guidugli at Notre Dame, those are big jobs.
Yeah, a lot of pressure to perform there. And there's probably some hires that we missed along the way, but it's a long off season. We can sprinkle them in here and there.
Rocky Long emerging at Syracuse is, because that dude is awesome, just a defensive coordinator. And like they essentially went from student to teacher, because Tony White went to Nebraska, and then like Long is coming. His scheme's already established. He's coming in. I think that could be interesting up there at Syracuse.
Whew, man, that was a sprint.
It was
a sprint. It's a lot of fun though. Always fun getting to chop it up and just talk about the carousel.
Now it's draft season. We got 2 weeks until the combine, Nick. From today,
we'll be at the combine. We'll be.
So I guess our
shows up there.
Our March 2nd episode, I guess we might have our typical lunch schedule might have to be tinkered with depending on work duties. But yeah, we'll be live from the combine.
Might be a little later in the afternoon. But yeah. As long as we can figure out the technology, by God, we're going to be live from the combine. But that's going to be exciting. That's going to be a lot of fun. Levis, there's a lot of potential destinations being thrown out there for him. And we'll learn more about the other guys. So, as always, it's been a pleasure hanging out with y'all today. Hopefully the other cats can keep it rolling. Spring practice, I mean, it's combine and then spring practice. So we'll double whammy there as Mark Stoops, he's getting his indoor facility. It's the last spring practice. They got to deal with the small field at Nutter. So I know he's fired up. We're fired up to be hanging out with y'all all season long right here on 11 Personnel.